Hello, thank you for watching my channel today. My name's Sarah and my channel is called Your True Shelf. And today I'm going to do a video talking about how I read what I read, because I am a doctor and a mum. I have two quite young children and I read around about 100 books a year. And so I thought I'd do a video talking about what I do to achieve the amount of reading that I do, but also how I make it the most enjoyable that I can, how I set up my room, how I choose my books, what formats of books I like, any little accessories I like using with my books. And I thought that I would just sort of do a video about how I make my reading as enjoyable and tailored to my life and my needs as I can. So hopefully this might give you just one or two little ideas that you could do if you wanted to make your reading as good a fit for you as you can if you haven't done that already. I thought firstly I'd talk about what kind of formats I use for my books, because it's not that I read 100 physical paperback books a year, because I think that I wouldn't have time to do that along with my other commitments in life, because I am working quite a lot of hours a week and I have all of the usual things that I have to do for my children and all of the stuff for like looking after the house and the life admin and the school admin and all those kinds of things. So I definitely don't have time to read 100 physical books a year. So I read probably about 40% of my reading is on audiobook. My choice of platform is Audible. I haven't ever explored any other platforms apart from using Libby and BorrowBox, which are the free apps that you can get with your library card in the UK. The reason I chose Audible is because I started with that around about 2012, I would say, maybe even earlier than 2012. And since then, other platforms have become more widely known, like Everand and things like that. But because I've got my whole library on Audible and I do really like it as an app, I've just always stuck with it. So when I listen to audiobooks, so I would say one thing is in the car. So my drive to work is actually quite short compared to how it used to be when I was working in all different hospitals. It's only about 10 minutes drive, but 10 minutes times 2 is 20. I don't always listen to audiobooks in the car. Sometimes I'm in the mood for music, so I think it's important to listen to what you're in the mood for. Or sometimes I might listen to a podcast. And then if I go out on home visits at lunchtime, then I've got more time in the car. And if I'm in the car on my own without the children or without my husband, then I'll listen on those journeys. And then the other time I really like to listen is when I'm doing things around the house. So if I'm doing the washing or cleaning or cooking or things like that, then I'll often have my headphones in if there's other people there, and I'll listen to audiobooks. I also have a shower speaker, so it's just a little cheap waterproof speaker that suctions onto the glass of the shower, and I listen to audiobooks while I'm in the shower. So that's also another sort of like 10-15 minutes a day when I can have a listen to an audiobook. So that's a big part of my reading. So I've got my Kindle. The case of this is getting a little bit old now, but I really like this case. I've just got one of the ones like that, and I've got a little pop socket on the back just so it makes it easier to hold my Kindle. I would say I read about 10 books a year on Kindle, so not loads, but I really want to read more. So at the moment what I've got is a book in physical form and a book on my Kindle at the same time, and actually I quite like doing that. I haven't really done that before, but it's really nice because this is much easier to take to work. Not that I ever have time to read at work, but I always take a book to work just in the hope that I might be able to. It never happens, but you know, I'm a hopeful person. So it's good to have this as one you can put in your bag when you're going out or when you're at work. And also sometimes if I want to read in bed and I can't have the light on, then this is good because you don't need the light on. This is a paper white, and also the screen doesn't therefore keep anyone else awake. So I am a fan of the deal of the day as well. I don't buy Kindle books just because they're 99p, but I have a wish list. And if I see anything on my wish list which comes up in this sale, then obviously I can buy it for £1, which is always helpful. And then, of course, I read paperbacks and hardbacks. So I love how a hardback looks on the shelf. If I can have a set in hardback, particularly fantasy hardbacks, which tend to be very beautiful, then I will choose those over paperbacks. I'll always take the dust jacket off when reading because I don't want them to get damaged, but reading a paperback is practically more easier because it's not so heavy and not so big. When do I read in the day? So I mainly read in the evening, apart from the reading that I've already said that I do when I'm listening to an audiobook. Physical book time is always pretty much in the evening because daytimes I'm quite busy, and if I do have some downtime in the day, sometimes I will read, but sometimes I'll want to do my other hobbies which need to have good light. So for instance, filming a YouTube video, I can't do this at the moment past like 2:30 of the day because of the light, and things like sewing, puzzles, painting, all of the things that I like to do, it's really hard to do them if the light's not very good. So I tend to prioritise those in the daytime if I have some downtime to do them. I also read in bed, so I find that reading in bed at night before I go to sleep is something that really helps me go to sleep quickly. I struggle to go to sleep even if I haven't read anything right before I go to bed, and I have to be careful what kind of book I choose, because if I choose something that's going to be in my dreams, then I don't sleep as well. So I need to read something kind of light-ish before bed as well. And then where I like to read. So I will put in some footage of how I've set up the lounge. The lounge at home for us is like really cozy, and I wanted to make sure that it was really nice and relaxing in there. So I've got a chair that I can read in, or I can lie down on the sofa. I like lying down propped up with my feet up. It's my favourite position to read in. And then I've got some really lovely blankets. I've got a lightweight blanket that I use in the summer if it's getting chilly. I've got a heavier blanket which I use in the winter and the autumn. I like having the fairy lights on, and I like having candles lit as well. I like making sure I've got a nice tea. I'm obsessed with tea. This has definitely become a problem since booktube, and everyone on booktube's obsessed with tea, and it's contagious. So I have a whole like stack of teas, mainly from Bird and Blend because they're my favourite for tea. So having that kind of stuff set up is really key to me for concentrating on my reading and making sure that I've got an atmosphere that I just want to be reading in. And then what do I like in the background? I would say, so sometimes my ambience is disturbed because I don't live on my own. So quite a lot of the time my husband will be watching something on TV, and so I will face away from the TV when I'm reading so that I don't get distracted. But I've also got some earplugs. I saw somebody talking about loop earplugs, and I decided to buy myself some, and they're really good for when you're trying to concentrate on your book and there's other noise going on. So they're really comfy. So I can either put those in if he's watching something on TV which is quite loud, or I can go in another room, obviously. And if I'm on my own, if he's out and I have the lounge to myself of an evening, I like listen to a record. So I got a record player about a year ago. I've always wanted a record player, and I really love listening to records while I'm reading. Or sometimes I'm in the mood for having a video on YouTube, which is one of the kind of reading ambience ones. So you can search for all kinds of things like bookish ambience or fantasy ambience, or like autumn, winter ambience and stuff like that. And there's these really gorgeous videos, some of which have like rain sound, some of which have no sound, some of which have little kind of relaxing music playing in the background. So I love having those on. Or sometimes I'll watch like a fireplace, which it looks like you've got a real fire, because we haven't got a real fire in our house. Sometimes I like watching read with me videos, so where somebody's just filmed themselves reading in a nice setting, and I find that's really nice. My husband always comes home and sees me watching them and is like, why do you want to watch somebody reading a book? And I'm like, because it feels like I'm reading with someone. It's just nice. And so yeah, that's another a nice thing I like having on in the background, or sometimes watching people to have reading sprints where they'll have a bit of a chat and then they'll have like a timer on where everybody reads and then they have a chat again. And I think that's quite nice having the timer, because it really sort of focuses you that you're going to read for that half an hour without any interruptions, which is really nice. So that's sort of how I like my reading setup to be. And then in terms of how I buy and choose my books is the next thing I was going to talk about. So I like, definitely my preferred way of buying books is to go into a bookshop, 100%. Like there's nothing like actually going into the shop and touching the books and sort of flicking through the books. And I think it's like a tactile experience to go and buy books. And I have bought them online before, but there's not really, I don't find you get the same buzz from buying them if you buy them online, because you buy them and then you have to wait for them to arrive, and I just don't like that as much. Sometimes I pre-order books, not that often, but sometimes I pre-order them, and then that's nice because then they arrive quite a long time later after you've ordered them. So that is sort of, then you get like, feel like you're getting a little present, which is nice. But I definitely prefer actually going into a bookshop, having a walk around and choosing what I want to buy. Like I really get sucked in by all the different covers. I very much get attracted to a book by its cover, and so I think you miss out that whole experience if you're not buying books in physical shops. How I choose what to read, how I choose what to buy is generally by my wish list. I find it less likely that I'll go into a bookshop and pick up a book I've never heard of. But it does happen, but I prefer to kind of go in with a bit of a focus. Like I always have my wish list on my phone of books that I've seen people talking about on booktube and that I'd like to read, or books from an author that I like that have come out. And then when I'm in the bookshop, I'll have a browse of those books mainly, and there will be ones that catch my eye, of course, but I really like going in, if I'm spending money on a book, knowing that it's one that I already think I'm going to like, because I've heard people whose opinions I enjoy talking about them, and therefore I think I'm more likely to enjoy them. And when I've got a much too big TBR, and how I actually choose the books. So before, the goal at the beginning of the year was definitely to read by whim, and I would say up until about a month ago I pretty much failed at reading by whim. I got sucked into too many challenges and readathons and everything, and I just didn't get a chance to read by whim as much as I wanted. And then I kind of got in a bit of a slump, and I just decided like, no, it's enough doing all of the stuff I was doing. So I've just been reading by whim over the last probably 2 months, and I have enjoyed that so much more. It's just, I've been really focusing on my series since I did the video a while ago about all of the series that I've either got to start or that I'm in the middle of, and I've just really wanted to focus on series. And I think seasonally for me, when it gets to autumn winter, I really like reading historical and fantasy and bigger books, and that I've just wanted to go and choose those books off my shelf rather than feel like my assigned reading is this, and so I won't have a chance to choose anything I actually want to choose. So I'm still doing my book club books, although I didn't do book club this month because it's a book that I've already read, and I'm still doing TBR spin because I love TBR spin, but I've cut back on everything else just so that I can focus on really what I want and get the maximum enjoyment out of reading, which is what it's all about at the end of the day. And so, yeah, that's my plan going forward, to carry on reading by whim. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about was, how do I record my reading and what reading accessories do I like? So recording my reading, I use Storygraph as absolutely my preferred platform. I find that it's massively superior to Goodreads, in my opinion. I just find it so much more accessible, the app, because for instance with Goodreads, I am on Goodreads because I've got friends on Goodreads who aren't on Storygraph, and so I want to keep my account open and active for that reason, and I do update it. But on the app, you can easily switch editions on Storygraph, and you have to do that via the website on Goodreads, which is more hassle. And also you can't even reply to comments on Goodreads without using the website rather than the app. And I just find things like that really weird, that nobody's sort of upgraded the app. The stats on Storygraph are amazing. The reading challenge things you can have where it will like stamp your prompts as complete. It will show you what percentage you are for a challenge. You can update your pages really easily. I just find that all of those features are superior and in every way, in my opinion, to Goodreads. And it's also even though I do use Amazon products in terms of like Audible and Kindle and stuff, it's also independent from Amazon, which is also nice. And so, yeah, I love Storygraph. I always have my Storygraph account linked in the description box if you want to be friends on Storygraph, and the same with Goodreads. And so I record my reading there, but I also have a Pinterest board. So every year I keep a Pinterest board of the books I read and the films I watch each year, because I just find when I'm looking through in terms of trying to decide on what my favourite books and films and stuff of the year were, it's much easier for me to just look through a board with all of the front covers on rather than go back through and look at I just find it easier than looking on an app. I could do it on Storygraph, I could do it on Goodreads. I just like seeing just the covers when I look on my Pinterest board. And then I tend to also make one of my favourite books of the year for each year, which is just a quick reference way of me to look back. And my favourite accessories, so I'd say number one is this little light that I have. So this brand is Grittin. I just got it from Amazon. I think it was about £10, and it lasts. It's a USB rechargeable. You can just clip it on the top of your book. The clip's really strong, which is good, because I've had one, and so is this. I've had ones before which are quite flimsy, but this one's really strong. The light is really nice and bright, and you can dim it and brighten it by holding the button down, but you can also put different qualities of light. I don't know if you can really see on here, but these are 3 different tones of light, sort of warmer and cooler, and I just find that super helpful. So in the evening when I've got just the fairy lights on and a lamp, it's not bright enough for me to read by without that, and it's just really handy that I can have that on without having like the main lights on in a room. And or if I'm in the car, I'm one of the lucky people who can read in a car. If I'm a passenger in the car and we're driving somewhere in the evening and it's dark, then I can read on the way home if I want to, because I can have my little lamp with me. So those things, that's my favourite reading accessory. I love a good bookmark. I love my shower speaker, like I said, and my earplugs. I'd say they're my top accessories for reading. So that's a little bit about how I read, where I read, what books I buy, and how I choose them, and just my perfect sort of reading setup. I'd really like to hear you talk about the same kind of things. So if you want to tell me in the comments down below any tips you have for reading, or if you want to tell me about like your favourite sort of place to read and those kind of things, then that would be lovely. I do love also reading outside, so in the summer I will go and read outside. I would read outside more, but if I'm outside out somewhere, I've normally got the whole family with me, and then it's harder to read. Not impossible, but harder. I'd love to hear anything you'd like to add, or by all means make your own video and talk about this kind of stuff. And I hope that you have a lovely week with lots of good books, and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye.